Today's story takes us deep into the heart of the old Wild West, a land where justice was often decided by the loudest gun, and mercy was a word few dared to speak. But on one burning afternoon, one man's courage would challenge the entire town and change the meaning of justice forever. The wind blew hard across the small town of Dry Creek, carrying with it the smell of dust, sweat, and fear. A crowd had gathered near the gallows in the middle of town, men with hardened faces, women clutching their shawls, and children too young to understand the darkness they were about to witness. At the center stood a woman, her wrists tied, her face bruised but unbroken. Her name was Clara Hayes. She was a widow, a mother of two, and accused of murdering the local ranch owner William Tucker. Tucker was a man with power, mean, wealthy, and feared. When he was found dead in the canyon near her home, everyone pointed their fingers at her. No trial. No chance to speak. Just a rope, a mob, and a sheriff too weak to stand up against the town's thirst for vengeance. Clara's young son, Jacob, no older than 10, stood by the edge of the crowd, tears streaking his dusty cheeks. He kept whispering, "Mama didn't do it. Mama didn't do it." But no one listened. The sheriff, Marshal Dugan, read from a crumpled piece of paper. For the murder of William Tucker by the power of the people of Dry Creek, the sentence is death by hanging. The hangman adjusted the knot. The crowd went silent. That's when the sound of hooves broke through the air, slow, steady, and deliberate. A stranger rode in on a dark horse, his hat low over his eyes, dust trailing behind him. He dismounted without a word, his boots hitting the ground with the weight of a man who'd seen too much of the world. The townsfolk turned. Some muttered. Others stepped back. "Who's that?" whispered a man. "Don't know," another replied. "But he ain't from around here?" The stranger's voice cut through the murmurs. "You're hanging an innocent woman," the sheriff frowned. "You got proof of that, mister?" "I got reason," the stranger said, stepping closer. "And I got eyes that see more truth than this mob." Clara lifted her head, her voice trembling. "Who are you?" He paused for a long moment. "Name's Colt Rayner," someone in the crowd gasped. Colt Rayner, the name was known in whispers. A former lawman turned drifter. Some said he'd walked away after seeing too much corruption. Others said he'd been on the run from the very law he once served. But now, he was here. Colt moved closer to the gallows, his eyes scanning the scene, the rope, the bruises on Clara's wrists, the nervous hands of the sheriff. "You're making a mistake," Colt said calmly. "Tucker wasn't killed by her. He was killed by greed." The sheriff stiffened. "You talking big, stranger. You got proof?" Colt pointed toward the crowd. "Where's Tucker's foreman, Elias? Shouldn't he be here mourning his boss?" The townsfolk glanced around. Elias, the man who'd found the body and claimed Clara was near it, was nowhere to be seen. Colt smirked slightly. "Convenient, ain't it?" The sheriff hesitated. Maybe he's out on ranch work. Or maybe he's hiding," Colt said, his tone cutting through the silence, "because he knows someone might start asking the right questions." He walked up to Clara, the rope still hanging above her head. "Mrs. Hayes, tell me, what did Tucker want from you?" Clara's eyes welled up. "He wanted my land. My husband left it to me before he passed. Tucker offered to buy it, but I said no. A week later, he was dead." Colt turned to the crowd. "You see? Tucker had enemies, and the one person standing in his way was this woman. That's reason enough for someone to frame her, someone who wanted that land, someone who knew the town would never question it." The sheriff shifted uneasily. "You're spinning stories, mister." Colt stepped closer to him. "Then let's prove it. Give me 1 hour. If I can't bring you the truth, you can hang her yourself." The sheriff looked at the crowd. There was murmuring, some angry, some uncertain. Finally he nodded. 1 hour, Rayner. "But if you're wrong, you hang too." Colt smiled faintly. "Fair enough." He rode out fast, the wind howling through the canyon. He followed tracks, hoof prints, fresh ones. They led toward Tucker's old ranch. The sun burned high as Colt pushed forward, his mind working through the puzzle. At the ranch, he found Elias loading a wagon with sacks of gold dust, gold that Tucker had kept hidden. "Going somewhere?" Colt asked, his revolver already drawn. Elias froze. "You don't understand." "I understand enough," Colt said coldly. "You killed Tucker, didn't you? You wanted the gold, and you blamed the woman who couldn't fight back." Elias's hand twitched toward his belt, but Colt was faster. The gunshot echoed across the plain. When the dust settled, Elias was alive, but bleeding from the shoulder, his gun lying in the dirt. Colt grabbed him by the collar and threw him across the wagon. "You're coming with me." Back in Dry Creek, the crowd stirred as Colt rode in, dragging Elias behind his horse. The sheriff stepped forward, stunned. "What's this?" "You're a real killer," Colt said, throwing Elias to the ground. Elias, trembling and pale, confessed it all: the theft, the fight with Tucker, and the lie he'd told to save his skin. The crowd fell silent as the truth spread through them like wildfire. Colt turned to the sheriff. "You still want to pull that rope?" The sheriff looked at Clara, then down at the ground. "Cut her loose." The hangman stepped forward, his hands shaking, and freed Clara's wrists. Her son ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist, sobbing into her dress. Colt watched quietly, his hat shadowing his face. "Thank you," Clara whispered. "You saved my life." He shook his head. "No, ma'am. Just gave it back to you." She looked at him through tears. "Will you stay? Maybe help rebuild what they took?" Colt smiled faintly. "I don't stay nowhere too long. But maybe one day, when the dust settles." He turned, mounted his horse, and rode off into the fading sun, the silhouette of a man who carried justice not in words, but in the quiet strength of his heart. As the town of Dry Creek watched him disappear over the ridge, they realized they hadn't just seen a rescue. They'd seen redemption, and for the first time in a long time. Justice had a face again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Every tale here reminds us that courage can still rise in the darkest of times, and sometimes one stranger's fight can save more than just a life.